following is a CUNY TV special presentation.
This morning's speaker is the Borough President of the Bronx, Ruben Diaz, Jr. And the Bronx holds a very special place in my family's history. I mentioned this to Ruben before. We love the Bronx. We have a tremendous history, and we are honored today to have you with us. Ruben first entered public office as a member of the New York State Assembly nearly two decades ago in 1997. While in the Assembly, Ruben fought for working families in the Bronx and focused on social advocacy, community empowerment, green economic development, and job creation. In 2009, he was elected as Borough President of the Bronx and has worked steadily to increase the quality of life in all corners of the borough. Over the last 7 years, Ruben has focused on implementing a robust agenda of economic development, housing, education, and public safety, and targeting large-scale revitalization of the Bronx. His efforts are paying off in significant ways. The Borough President has secured over $7 billion in new development for the Bronx, with 13,000 new housing units built and 15,000 new jobs created, and has overseen major projects such as the Fresh Direct relocation, as well as Code Bronx initiative launched in partnership with the Technology Center late last year, aimed at creating computer science programs in every Bronx school. Ruben's office has also provided millions in funding for a variety of projects throughout the borough, projects like green roofs, park improvements, boardwalk pavilion renovations, and more. Mr. Borough President, thank you for joining us this morning, and we look forward to hearing your vision of the future of the Bronx. Ladies and gentlemen, Bronx Borough President Ruben Diaz, Jr.
I appreciate this opportunity to be with you here today. And what I'm here to do is I'm here to tell you that in order for us to talk about a better New York, what we also need to start doing is celebrating where we have victories in parts of our city and how it all ties in together. In the Bronx, we are building a better Bronx. In the Bronx, we are planning with what I call a purpose. Now, what do I mean by that? So many of you in this room, and of course those who are not in this room, you've been working with us tirelessly over the last at least 6 years since I've been the Borough President, many of you for many more years, for decades. And there's so many others who still don't realize the renaissance, the turnaround that is happening in my borough. I say this because too many people still don't know that over the last 6 years alone, we've been able to cut unemployment by nearly half. When I first got to Borough Hall, the unemployment rate was 14.2%. Now, more than 100,000 more Bronxites are working today than the first day that I took office. We've seen an investment of private equity of over $9.5 billion in just 6 years alone. Almost 54 million square feet of development. We've been working with the Bronx Overall Economic Development Corporation. We got a team from the State Department of Labor. We have folks from the SBA at the federal government. They're working at the first floor at the courthouse at Borough Hall. And we are making sure that whenever an employer has an opening, after we do screenings, after we do job fairs, that we tie those individuals in the Bronx who have the skill set to those openings. So if you are an employer and you need 2 managers, we'll send you 12 resumes and 12 people, all of them qualified. You interview who you want, depending on what you're looking for. But we know that all 12 of those individuals are Bronxites, they're qualified, they don't waste your time. And because of that, we've seen that the workforce participation is at the highest that it's been in the history of our borough. And it is working. And if it's working for the Bronx, that has to work for New York City. We've been able to do this in a way where it's just not low-paying jobs. We believe and we've been the champions of income inequality. I say that because in the city of New York, we have a living wage ordinance. We have a living wage law. That debate started in the Bronx. In the Bronx, we have jobs that have been in the technology field, something that folks don't realize, how we are trying to become the next Silicon Valley. And why not? Why not? Why not think differently? Think the Bronx. In the Port Morris section of our borough, we have a wonderful non-for-profit organization called Per Schola. Per Schola trains Bronxites every single day, everything from turning on a computer to tearing it apart, to putting it back together, to software. We've partnered up with Doran Jones that tests the software for the financial industry. And what they do is after you pass and you get certified from Per Schola, you then go and take their 8-week course. And right now, as we speak, in the South Bronx, there are over 150 people who are testing software for the financial industry in groups of 10s. These would be normally jobs that would be outsourced in other countries, and that's happening right in the South Bronx. Real estate is at a premium in the city of New York. While everybody is concentrating on Manhattan, a better New York is more than just what's happening in this borough of Manhattan. Having a better New York is more than just downtown Brooklyn. We see what's happening in Long Island City. We want you all to come and see and discover what I call the New Bronx. For those of you who are developers, look at the Port Morris section of the Bronx. Come, and I invite you to take a tour of the Harlem River waterfront, which we've already rezoned. We know that in that area alone, we could have over 2 million square feet of development. We could do over 3,500 units of housing. We could do commercial space, waterfront access. Just a couple of months ago, we put out a report where we studied 3 different rail yard sites. And one of them has a great potential for us, a platform, the one across the street from Lehman College. It's called the Concourse Rail Yard site. Our report shows that we could have about 2.5 million square feet of real estate there, real estate that doesn't exist. As we look at the future of the city of New York, we have to start studying and coming up with plans and ways in the way that they're doing at the Hudson Yards. That has to happen in other parts of the city. And our report shows that across the street from Lehman College, you can have retail, you could have residential, you could have commercial space, you could even do an expansion of Lehman College, which is my alma mater. Anybody here from Lehman? All right, CUNY. Tourism in the Bronx has increased by over 14% last year. That's significant because more and more people are starting to realize that, yes, we're the home of the Yankees. We have the best zoo in the nation, in the Bronx Zoo, and the beautiful Eden in what I call God's country, the Botanical Garden. But we're more than just that. Folks are starting to come to Wave Hill. We have Orchard Beach that saw 1.5 million visitors last year alone. And I proposed in my State of the Borough address to redo the entire pavilion. I put in a $10 million deposit, and we're getting positive feedback from the city council delegation and from the state delegation so that we can have a state-of-the-art pavilion at Orchard Beach so that when folks come, they can see a beautiful facility, a world-class a place where we can have events, where we can use it year-round, something that we can be proud of. The Bronx Children's Museum is coming soon. And we're still waiting on so many other things that I think are going to be totally transformative in our borough. Transportation is a big issue in the city. And how are we going to make sure that folks get to and from the different boroughs, especially when the other boroughs are where the economy is growing most? I say that because we were proud to announce this year that the 4 Metro North stations are coming to the eastern corridor of the Bronx. That's a big deal, not just for the Bronx. That's a big deal for New York City. It's a big deal because in Morris Park, in Van Ness / Parkchester, Hunts Point, and in Co-op City, to have these stations that can bring Bronxites to and from Midtown in under half an hour, or have folks go north to Connecticut in under 40 minutes. That would be transformative for the entire city of New York. We know what rail means to a municipality. It would create jobs. We would look to rezone 3 of the 4 stations so that we can go up and build density, something you developers who are here or who you may know should pay attention to in the near future, so that we can have individuals back and forth and create that exchange that needs to happen between the different boroughs. We are waiting for the development of the Kingsbridge National Ice Center, which would create 9 ice rinks and would have the largest ice availability in the entire country. That would create hundreds of jobs. Yeah, it's okay. I agree with Mark Messier. I support Mark Messier's efforts. We've done a lot of work around the Kingsbridge National Ice Center, and it's about time that the city finally come forth and give the keys to the people of Nick so that they can hurry up and develop it. Our kids deserve it. We did a wonderful, wonderful job in bringing stakeholders together. This project has the best community benefits agreement that the city has seen in quite a long time. And so many people, even outside of the Bronx, are anticipating this project. We also have the Hunts Point Produce Market. The food industry is big in employment. The food industry is big in our borough and for our city. The Hunts Point Produce Market was feeding the entire eastern region. We have thousands of people employed there on a daily basis. And tens of thousands who are employed because of the markets. The state has put in their money. The city has put in their money. The BOEDC and all of the cooperatives there have been working together. And we need to move forward we're waiting for the city so that we can have a plan to move forward and make sure that we have a state-of-the-art facility in the largest produce market, certainly in the Western Hemisphere, if not in the entire planet. These are all things that make the Bronx great. These are all the things that make the Bronx better. And if it's better for the Bronx, it has to be better for New York. Since I've been the borough president alone, over $3.5 million in the restoration of our public parks. More and more of our families are able to go out and have a good time, enjoy waterfronts, enjoy parks like Pelham Bay Park, the largest park in the city of New York. Soundview Park just saw a restoration of over $60 million. Downtown has the High Line. We have the High Bridge. We just opened up the High Bridge that connects the Upper West Side of the Bronx to Upper Manhattan. If you haven't seen that, you should come in and check it out. These are all the types of amenities and enhancements that we've been able to bring to our borough. It is the reason why more and more people want to visit us. It is the reason why more and more people want to live there. The borough is better, and if it's better for the Bronx, Has to be better for New York. The Bronx is the safest Bronx that the world has seen in the last 50 years. Don't take my word for it. Last year, the city of New York saw a bump in homicides. The Bronx saw a reduction. We don't get credit for that. I'm here speaking to you today because so many of you had a lot to do with that, by creating jobs, by educating our folks, by believing and investing in the borough. But what we cannot allow is only for negative stories to come out of areas like the Bronx and around the city of New York. We have to celebrate these victories. If the Bronx had contributed to the bump in homicides, everybody would have been writing about it. We saw not only a reduction, but when you compare us to other major cities like Dallas, if you use the national metric of 1 homicide per 100,000, you compare us to Dallas, if you compare us to DC, if you compare us to Philadelphia, we are much safer. And yet, we don't get the recognition that we deserve. Year to date this year, we're responsible for almost 27% of the homicide reduction in the entire city of New York. This is what is allowing for people to say, you know what, I want to do business there. I want to go and visit there. This is the reason why our restaurant business is booming. Epicureans from all over the region are coming to the Bronx for our diversity. The fact that we're safe, we give thanks to the NYPD and the work that they've been doing. But it's also because we've initiated a number of things like Peace in Our Streets initiative, working with the clergy, working with elected officials, working with non-for-profits and tenant association leaders, knocking on doors, letting the parents know that there are alternatives for their kids and the students in the surrounding area, letting them know that they can call a hotline if they know somebody with an illegal weapon, and that there's a reward at the end of the day for it. I also say this, that in the borough of 1.4 million, over 40% of the people who live there were born in another country. And while we have some folks running for President of the United States vilifying the immigrant, I'll tell you that the Bronx has benefited from the immigrant community. Did you know that we have over 23,000 new units of housing in the last 6 years alone? Did you know the majority of it was low income and moderate? And all of it built in a LEED sustainable way? And that we have great projects that are national paradigms like Villa Verde and the soon-to-come La Central that are gold and platinum LEED. We're leading the way in green development. We're leading the way in housing development. And we're doing it making sure that not only it's affordable to folks, but we're also doing it to make sure that Bronx hands are the ones building it, that vendors who are being used for these projects come from the Bronx. But we're also doing it in a way where we're retaining our professionals. You know, a lot of times when we speak of displacement, we always speak of the people at the low income bracket, at the low income bands. For me, I believe that we need to protect them, and we need to do that. But in the city of New York, not just the Bronx, we also have to be mindful of those individuals who are professionals who don't want to leave and don't want to be pushed out. And too often in the past, at least in my borough, so many folks have educated themselves, they've gotten a career, and they've cut and run. And in the past, maybe they had a number of excuses, maybe because the crime was high in the 70s, 80s, and the early 90s. But now more and more people want to stay. And they make too much money for the low-income bands. They can't buy a home in Thras Neck or Pelham Bay. Can't afford a home in Morris Park or Riverdale. How do we retain those professionals? How do we retain those individuals who go off to college and come back and they're ready to start their careers? If we don't do that, there'll be a brain drain. If we don't do that, we lose their employment status to other counties in the state of New York, to other states. And so as we plan for the city of New York, we have to make sure that we accommodate and retain that professional working class. And then obviously there are things that we can all do moving forward as a city. You know, something that's on everybody's lips these days is homelessness. My borough knows a little bit about this. And everybody wants to point fingers. Everybody wants to talk about whose fault it is that we have so many homeless people in the city of New York. But it's a very complex issue. This is an issue that deals with those that are out on the street, their mental health support facilities that we need to provide for them. But on a nightly basis, folks need to realize that we have almost 60,000 people in the shelter system. 60,000 people. 58% of them are African Americans. 31% of them are Latinos. 40% of them are children. And 1/3 have a job. I tell you this because we all profess to be our brothers and sisters' keeper. During this Holy Week, many of us went to houses of worship. And we pray for folks. And yet, when a supportive housing facility or a shelter is being proposed in our neighborhood, we all say, no, not here. And the city has to do better by working with the community and stakeholders so that they just don't spring a shelter on folks. The city needs to do better in reaching out to community boards and community leaders. Quite often we find out about these sightings last minute. But we all collectively have to do a better job at also working and identifying places that are more palatable so that we can have these sightings. We could do innovative things like, if we're talking about affordable housing, how is it that we ensure, or mandate for that matter, that there's a carve-out of units for NY Link program participants, especially for those who have jobs, right? Early in my administration, I was able to implement an executive order that says, you know, you want to develop in the Bronx, we will look to you more favorably and help you out if you build in a lead sustainable way. We were able to look at not just giving capital dollars to those new developments, but we looked at existing buildings. Sustainability for us not only means protecting the environment, but it's also dealing with health issues. Bronchitis, asthma, emphysema, other respiratory ailments that plague many of the people of the Bronx and throughout the city of New York. And the number one culprit, the number one contributor to that are not automobiles, even though they have their faults. The number one are existing buildings. So early on in my administration, we were able to give capital dollars to a consortium of developers so that they can convert from number 6 to number 2 fuel to natural gas. I believe that while we've been able to allocate capital funding to some of these projects, those are just one-shot deals. But we need to do that with public dollars, as well as having private investors, people who want to invest their money, who want a good rate of return on their investment, but they also want to do good with that investment. It's called impact investments. They don't just want a rate of return. They want to do well. They want to do something good with it. So we've already been dealing with an organization or a developer is called Chestnut Holdings. We've been able to work with them, and we're waiting on the city. If you do a holistic approach of a building, if you analyze a building, if you do an audit of a building, and you give them the money that they need so that they can do all of the changes in the building, not only do you incentivize a developer to do it, you clean the environment. Cleaning the environment and reducing pollution helps make the community healthier. You create jobs in the green economy. There are so many people who are trained in the installation of this green material but don't see a light at the end of the tunnel because there aren't jobs there. And if you do this the right way, with the right commitment, everybody talks about affordability in the city of New York. If you do this the right way, I believe, and so many experts believe, that the energy cost savings would be so great that even after a property owner pays for the material, even after you give the investors their fair share, that you're able to hold down the rents because of the cost savings are so much lower. There's so many different things that we can do on education. For starters, I'll tell you that I support wholeheartedly public schools, but I'm also a supporter of charter schools. And I think that as we have these debates going around the city of New York, and as I join parents, charter school parents, and I tell both sides, we have to lower the temperature on the rhetoric. Our babies are listening. And often, the rhetoric gets too heated. You have a school like PS 55 in the Bronx that's co-located with a charter school. They have shown the city how they can coexist. They exchange resources. They work together in the building. Both principals are working together, the parents, the students. There is no reason why this whole debate has to be so cantankerous. If tomorrow you wave a magic wand and you got rid of all the charter schools in the city of New York and the state of New York, which is not going to happen, will all of the obstacles and all the things that we complain about some of our public schools, will they go away? Or will they still be there? So let's all work collectively to make sure that the traditional public schools have all of the resources that we have. We give the teachers all of the resources that we need. And we have the right people in play. We have a chancellor in the city of New York who comes from the education field. And just last week, the state of New York made history by having the Bronx region, the first Latina, and Dr. Betty Rosa become the first chancellor of the State Department of Education. We need to do more around gifted and talented and specialized high schools. Gifted, talented classes. I'm a product of gifted and talented in District 7 in the South Bronx. It did wonders for me. It opened up opportunities. Unfortunately, though, more and more of our students in the South Bronx are not given the same opportunity. I say this because while we did a lot of work, a lot of legwork with parents and teachers last year, and we saw an increase in those who took tests around the Bronx, in areas like District 7 in the South Bronx, only 87 of our kids were tested. And only 6 of them were able to apply. And because it was only 6, the city did not even bother, the Department of Education didn't even bother to place them in a gifted and talented class. That has to change. It's the reason why I support the Black, Latino, and Asian Caucus's call to have every single student in UPK classes tested. The more kids that are tested, the more that we'll be able to qualify. The more that will qualify, the more we'll have the same opportunities that I did. The city council should pass this, the mayor should sign it, and we should make sure that all UPK students are tested. The same thing with specialized high schools. Bronx High School of Science. Everyone knows this school. World-renowned, has a national reputation. It's only Bronx is where it's located and the fact that it has his name on it. I say that because less than 8%, about 8% of the students who go to Bronx Science live in the Bronx. That's a travesty of our system. You know, more than 78% of CUNY Community College students who graduated from a public high school took remedial classes last year. 78%. Now, our kids should be ready to go right into mainstream higher education courses. But if they must have remedial classes, I believe that it should not be the student who pays for it. So many of our kids And being a father of 2 college students, I know a little bit about tuition and how much that costs. Right, Darrell Towns? I say that the Department of Education of the City of New York, if they failed our students and not have them adequately educated and with their high school diploma, that the Department of Education should be the ones to pay for the tab. I believe that many of our kids need to be challenged in civic duties. That's the reason why we call for a Bronx Youth Corps. And this should happen all over the city. Our kids need to be challenged to think better about their city, to think better about their communities. The Youth Corps will go out there and make sure that these kids are cleaning parks, working with senior citizens, painting graffitis off the walls. Have them invested in where they live. Have them invested in the city. After all, this is what they're going to inherit. So these are all things that we've been doing in our borough. These are all things that need to be celebrated. We are building a better Bronx. And by building a better Bronx, it means that we're building a better New York. And so thank you for listening to me, and I look forward to working with each and every single one of you.